Andrew, first off, tell me about the Pembroke VCT and a bit about yourself.
Okay, so Pembroke VCT was set up in 2013. We have 40 investments in our portfolio, and we have £150 million under management. A little bit about myself. I was an entrepreneur between 1991 and 2008. And then back in 2008, when I saw the credit crunch coming and sort of global meltdown, I decided I needed something slightly more stable. I'd just got married, I'd had a child, I had another child on the way. And I went to work for Peter Dubins at Oakley Capital and looking after his personal investments. We found over the few years we were doing that we were getting more and more opportunities coming into Oakley's office to seek advice and funding from Peter and his network, but they were too small for the private equity fund. So back in 2013, we decided to establish the VCT. So we were very much a fund founded by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs.
So what types of companies are you looking for?
Good question. We're looking for companies that primarily we focus not on what the company is, but who the founder is. We are very much a founder-led business. When we look at companies, we obviously like those companies to have achieved a certain amount. We look for businesses that are doing roughly £1 million of annualized revenue. We look for what the teams are that the founders have been able to put together. So we work across 6 specific sectors. Those sectors are wellness, education, digital services, media, design, and hospitality, food and beverage.
Okay, and is there any types of companies that you avoid or people that you avoid investing in?
Types of company that we avoid. So we very much focus on businesses that we understand. We focus on people who we feel have what it takes to scale a business, but also have what it takes to listen and work with us and collaborate. So we tend to stay away from businesses that we have very little understanding of. So you'll see our portfolio has no fintech, no medtech, no proptech. And now we get approached by a lot of these businesses, but we just don't have enough exposure to these sectors for us to be able to feel confident to make investments in them.
And how many people other than you are in the team, and what do they do?
So I've got 10 in my team at the moment, and that has really it's morphed into what it is from the early days, where it was just me and an investment analyst. And what I found in the early days was that it was very difficult with me and an investment analyst to focus on carrying out due diligence and portfolio management, and that person being the same. Because if you have a problem in a portfolio company, you need to down tools and deal with that problem, whether it's cash flow, whether it's a HR problem, whatever it might be. So from very early stage, it was always our intention to set up the VCT to have a dedicated investment team and a dedicated portfolio management team. And those teams have grown, and now we've got 3 in the investment team, we've got 3 in the portfolio management team, and then we've got a great back office team as well.
Yeah. And can you tell me about some of the companies you've got in the portfolio?
Yes, so I'll tell you about some of our recent investments. We've just made an investment in a business called Coat, which is it's a paint business. They manufacture paint. The paint they manufacture is made to order. It's got great ESG credentials, which is obviously very important these days for us and our investors. But what Paint did is they took an industry which is a hugely established industry that really hasn't moved on with product innovation with regards to digital technology. So they very much disrupted how people buy, how people select paint, how they buy paint, and it's going great guns. The founders there are really great people to work with. And then another one we've invested in is called Dropless, that is a car wash business. It started off as a car wash business with great ESG credentials. They use a litre of water per wash as opposed to 100 litres of water per wash. Now, the thing about the car wash industry as well is that it is the second largest of employer of trafficked labour in the UK. So they set about changing that as well, and they train all their staff, and they have teams, and they have a great staff morale within the business. The water they have saved, which is obviously a big issue in today's world, since launch last year, they have saved over 21 million litres of water, which, to put that into context, that's about the size of 8 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So they continue to do great guns. Now, what they've also realised is that while having someone's keys in their hand, they can also take data points of the car. So they check the mileage, they check the tyre pressure, they check the tyre gauge. So they've become very much a servicing business that when you have a problem with your car, they can turn around and they can provide scratch and dent repairs, they provide MOT services. So it started off as a car washing business, and then they pivoted to take advantage of opportunity as and when it came along.
And some more established businesses you've got in the portfolio?
So we've got, in the fashion world, we've got a wonderful business called Me&M, who were going great guns prior to COVID. And then COVID hit, and we had a board meeting, and I think the whole world sort of slightly stopped and thought, what do we do? And the team there was so good about changing the product very quickly into less about workwear and formal wear for the evening and more about what do people want at home, because people didn't stop buying stuff. The world didn't shut down. People just bought in a different way. They engaged more online rather than going into stores. So Me&M absolutely thrived. They got the collections right time and time again. They found new ways of digital engagement. And we've really grown the business over COVID. Now, in the last 6 months, the stores have opened back up, and the stores are now also outperforming what they were doing pre-going into COVID. So it's been a great success. But that is really about team and understanding who the customer is, who they're designing for, and not really veering too far away from that, just doing more of what you're really good at. And then there's a business called Thriver. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they offer a blood test. They're one of the only businesses that have managed to persuade consumers that taking your blood at home is a possibility, and I do it every 3 months, signed up to their subscription service. They send you a kit in the post, you do a little pinprick, drip some blood into a couple of little tubes, you send it off in the post, and they go through standard testing. But what they do is they then analyse all those results against your previous results. So it sort of sets a trend line as to where your health is going. And what was amazing for me is going into COVID, I decided to make some changes in my life. I ate less meat, I decided I would drink less, I took more exercise. And when I did my next test, I saw all the things that were approaching a level that there was maybe an element of it not being safe. Suddenly they would all fall back into the safe category. So you realize that tiny changes you make in your life actually have a really big effect on your internal health. And I think what's happened is that the consumer over COVID has become much more driven by knowing what's going on within their own wellness and becoming preventative rather than reactionary. They have also, because they persuade consumers to take blood, they've also been offered a contract from the government to be able to monitor antibody testing with regards to COVID. So they're providing services that are helping us find a way out of this situation in the long term.
And you've had a few exits. Do you want to talk about them?
We have. We've had a couple of exits. I always said we'd get them, but people were waiting. So we had a couple of exits this year in January, which were very different. January 21, we exited from Pasta Evangelists. We'd only held the investment since January 20. Being a food delivery business, they got very much caught up in the COVID. Everyone's trying new things at home. Everyone wants to eat out. You couldn't eat out, so you're willing to sample and try food delivery businesses. And they did so well that they got an approach from Barilla, who, let's face it, they're the largest Italian food business in the world, and the largest Italian food business bought a small independent British pasta business. So we thought that was a huge success. We over doubled our money on that one in a year. And then Plenish is the other one we exited from in April. Plenish was one of the first companies we backed back in 2013 when Cara Rosen, the founder, approached us. She wanted to introduce the UK to cold press juicing, like has been done in the States. She was doing £8,000 a month out of her kitchen, and we've backed her successively along the way in line with our stepping stone investment approach. What was great about Cara is that she wasn't frightened to pivot away from the cold press juice model. She pivoted away from it. She went into the nut milk market, which she realised was a much bigger market as people were getting more driven by their health. And we exited that to Britvic PLC, again, another sale to a much, much larger trail business. And I think one of the interesting things that we've seen is that when 15 years ago, when I was an entrepreneur, people spoke about building a business into a £100 million business to be able to exit it. I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing so much innovation in young companies that they don't need to get to this 100 million mark. A lot of them will do, but actually what we encourage our founders to do is focus on growing your businesses from where they are today at £1 million where we invest, focus on getting to 5, then to 10, then to 20. And if you do that and you control your costs, then exits will happen. But don't have this magic number that you need to get to, because it will be much harder to achieve that.
And what is a typical exit like? So what do you expect? How long do you expect a company typically to take to get from investing to exit? Obviously, you've only had 2 so far, and they're quite different timescales. But
I think looking at the different timescales, I think what I would say is that looking at Plenish and where we are now on how we invest and what we invest in, Plenish would have been too early stage for us to make that investment, and it really took the first 2.5 to 3 years to grow it into a business that was turning over £1 million, which is now where we would invest. So those early years would probably be cut out. So we don't have a set of parameters. What we tell founders is keep your head down, grow your business, exits will happen. And that's really what we try and encourage people to do, because every opportunity we see is a unique opportunity to work with a different bunch of founders and management teams, and help them deliver what they want to deliver, and hopefully expedite that process.
And you did touch briefly on the pandemic, but how has that affected you in general and the companies that are in your portfolio?
Well, I think everyone was affected differently. Everyone across the industry was affected differently. When the pandemic hit, we worked very closely with our founder companies. We had a traffic light system. We were in touch with them on a weekly, if not daily basis as to what was going on. It was all about cash preservation. And the first sort of six to 8 weeks, there was an element of panic. Is any business going to survive? Is any consumer ever going to want to go out again? And when I look at our portfolio, some of our businesses like Thriver and some in the education sector, really were in their element. They were in exactly the right space at the right time as things were being driven digital, and people were more concerned about the way they educated their children, their overall health. But I think what's interesting is when I look at our businesses that were in the problem end of the sector, I look at our travel business and our hospitality businesses, they've all come back with aplomb. And I think the important thing is that's about the quality of founders that we're backing, who, yes, we worked very closely with them. Yes, we had to make difficult decisions to lay off staff and basically mothball the business, but continually develop the business while they were being mothballed so that when they came back, they were stronger. It wasn't just a case of, well, this hasn't worked. Actually, all of our founders, I think we only lost one business over COVID. And that business was a relatively small investment. It was in the fashion industry with a bit of fashion tech that just actually didn't work. And we saw COVID as a big resistor that would prevent it from coming back. So we unfortunately had to say goodbye to that one. But all the others were mothballed and have come back stronger, whether that be our shops, our restaurants, travel businesses, secret food tours, Hotel Map, they're all doing great.
So what is the secret ingredient all these founders have?
Oh, they don't only have one, but I would say that there are probably 2 ingredients that I think you find it very difficult to teach people. Those 2, one is the ethic of hard work. So one of the things we weigh up is when we look at a business, what has the founder achieved? Have they managed to get here on very small amounts of money? Have they built a team persuading people who should be paid more to join their team because actually they buy into their dream and their business plan and what they're going to create. So that whole hard work thing, I don't think you can teach people. And the other one is communication. Founders have to know how to communicate. We're going to have good times and bad times. And one of the things we do before investing is we spend a lot of time with the founder, understanding more about them, getting to know the founder well, because those are the ones that we're going to have to work with. So I think it was the founder of Airbnb who said he would much rather work with great founders on a not so good business than not so good founders on a great business. And that's very much the way we look at it. The business we're presented in the beginning is going to vastly change even 6 months down the road. So we look at founders who can really take advantage of opportunity, communicate with us and work hard.
And how involved do you get?
Again, each business is different. I would say when we first invest, that's when we are at our most involved. And we, rather than giving a prescriptive list of things that we can do for founders, which, to be quite honest, would be slightly disingenuous because founders don't all need the same things. We look at every opportunity as a unique opportunity, and we ask the founders where they need our help. So they give us a list of what they want us to do. Is it opening up doors? Is it helping with HR matters? Is it hiring a non-exec chairman? So we will provide all the services that the founders need, but we don't go in and say, this is what we do, because if it was that easy, everyone would be doing it.
You talked about one failure during the pandemic. Have you had many failures, and do you expect many failures in the portfolio as a general rule of thumb?
I think investing in the space that we do, which is relatively high risk, sometimes we might back the wrong founder that we have communication problems with down the road. Sometimes the business might be not the correct product market fit for the market at the moment. That doesn't mean it's a bad business, doesn't mean it was a bad investment. We will obviously get businesses that don't work, but I see it much like a marriage. I have a very good marriage, fortunately. But you go into a marriage and you have to communicate and you have to learn new ways of working with your partner, and then you have children and you have to communicate with them in a different way. And all of our investments are like a marriage with those founders and those management teams. And on the whole, you work your problems out, because there will be problems in all of them. Nothing is a business plan that goes to plan. So we try and make sure that we work with founders to get over the tough times, but in some cases that's not possible, and we have to say goodbye to the founder. And in those cases, you want to do it much like a marriage would dissolve. You want to do it on an amicable way, with everyone remaining friendly. So we see our portfolio as a portfolio that has a lot of scalable growth in it. The ones we work hardest with are the ones we feel that need our attention more. So we work harder with our ones that we think are at risk, of which I'm pleased to say there aren't many, but need more of our time.
And you've given me lots of examples of companies. Are there any other star performers you want to talk about, really rapidly growing companies within your portfolio?
Yes, we backed a very advanced nutraceutical, which to all intents and purposes is a high-grade vitamin pill called Lima Life. Since we backed them, they have launched a laser that is the first handheld home-use laser that helps cure skin problems. So they have been absolutely flying over COVID, and there's no sign of that stopping now that we're coming out of COVID. People who have been driven to be concerned more about their health are still continuing that way.
And finally, Andrew, for those looking to invest in a VCT, why should they invest with you this year? You know, what makes you different from the other VCTs?
Well, I guess everyone's going to talk about the same thing. Firstly, we are a fund founded by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. We have one share class, which I think is really important. So all our investments are held in the same share class. We can't cherry pick which share class gets which investment. Something I haven't touched on today, we are very founder friendly in that we don't charge any monitoring fees on our portfolio companies. So we don't like to take our investors' cash, put it into companies and then pay ourselves extra fees through the back door. And lastly, the funds that we are raising at the moment, we will start deploying immediately because we don't sit on a large cash pile. I always think it's very important to raise what you think you can sensibly deploy over a 12-month period.
Andrew Wolfson, the Pembroke VCT, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex.